Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin's holding steady around 118K, and it might be because Donald Trump finally dropped his big crypto policy report, which ended up saying very little. Bo Hines, on the other hand, says the US wants all the Bitcoin it can get. Meanwhile, the Samourai wallet devs pled guilty and are headed to prison for writing privacy code the government didn't like. And joining us later, Samson Mow, Bitcoin evangelist, nation-state adoption architect, and the man helping countries ditch fiat like it's Blockbuster. All that and more right now. Let's go! Good morning and happy Thursday, my fellow coin collectors and sat stackers. I'm Hank Hudson coming to you live from San Francisco, where tech is a religion, the pigeons wear Patagonia vests, and a self-driving Uber just asked me for a 5-star review, and I'm not exactly sure how to feel about it. It's Thursday, and again, before we dive into the Fed's latest non-plan, the White House's regulatory haiku, and whatever Michael Saylor bought in the last 45 minutes, smack that like button like it's Chris Rock at the Oscars, and follow RoxomTV and me and Hank at RoxomTV on whatever platform you prefer to waste your time with. Now, whether you're watching from a cubicle, your cold storage bunker, or a Discord server filled with JPEG maximalists, welcome to the madness. But before we get into the chaos this morning, let's see what fresh nonsense the markets are serving up in this morning's market rundown. Let's go. All right, well, let's see what the crypto gods have served up for us this morning. And right now, things are looking okay. Not a ton of movement, and sometimes that's a good thing. Right now, Bitcoin hovering just above that 118K mark. Ethereum chilling right beneath $3,800 itself. XRP sitting just above $3 at that 308 level. Cardano down about a percentage point this morning, sitting just beneath 76 cents a coin. And Dogecoin doing what it does best, and that's not a lot. Right now, it's right below that 22-cent mark. In TradFi, things are looking a little better. Right now, the Dow Jones is standing pat at around 44,450. Not a lot of action or movement there this morning. The Nasdaq up slightly, about 149 points during the AM hours here. The S&P 5 also up about 0.4 percentage points. Again, not a lot going on this morning. MicroStrategy, though, they're feeling the love. They're up over 2.5 percentage points, sitting pretty at around 405 a share. Coinbase also up about $5 this morning, right around that 382 mark. Tesla, they're down a little bit, about 1.5 percentage points today. Elon, let's get to it, buddy. Nvidia, not too much happening there. They're right below the 180 a share mark. And GameStop, not a lot happening either. Right around that $22.50 a share mark. Not a lot going on in the market this morning, but we have a lot going on in today's show. So we're going to take a break, and when we're back, we're going to start with the top stories of the morning during our bull run. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alrighty, welcome back to this morning's bull run. Well, yesterday, Jerome Powell spoke, and then Bitcoin immediately dropped below 116K, albeit briefly. To its credit, the price of BTC is now back around 118K, but yesterday's dip came right after Powell said the U.S. is in the early stages of inflation, driven by, surprise, surprise, Donald Trump's tariffs. And the Fed itself, well, in Powell's own words, still trying to empirically learn about the process, which is government code for we're just kind of winging it. In response, President Trump said the U.S. is spending billions while the Fed keeps holding interest rates steady. Let's roll the clip.
And we should be lowering the rates. You know, each point that this gentleman keeps up costs us $365 billion a year. Think of that. 1 point, $365 billion. If you bring it down a point, we save 365. We should be the lowest interest rate, and we're not. We're 38, number 38, because of the Fed. It's all because of the Fed. He's done a bad job.
You heard it from Don Juan himself. We should be the lowest interest rate. Everybody says so. Now, the CME FedWatch tool showed traders slashing the odds of a September rate cut from 63.7% to now around 47% in real time. The Bitcoin market reacted predictably. A quick faceplant, then a half-hearted recovery. Some traders, the eternal optimists, said this is all about consolidation. One even claimed a bullish pennant was forming with a breakout target of around 143K. Now, despite all the ambiguity, Bitcoin open interest rose 1.23%, a signal that once again, someone out there is betting on chaos. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index remains parked in greed because nothing says rational investing quite like buying Bitcoin while the Fed shrugs at inflation and traders scream into the charts. Now, the Trump administration released its long-teased crypto report additionally yesterday as well, and a 163-page PDF followed that reads like a choose-your-own regulatory adventure. It promises clarity, but it delivers a whole lot of jargon and lands squarely in the category of, hey, we tried. First up, taxonomy. No, not the science of classifying plants, the other one. The report wants to define which cryptocurrencies are commodities and which are securities, because apparently we still don't know. The SEC and CFTC are being asked to play nice and share jurisdiction. The CFTC gets the spot markets. SEC, they get the securities. Everyone else gets a headache. SEC Chair Paul Atkins applauded the framework as a rational path to protect investors and encourage innovation, which sounds nice until you remember this is the same SEC that took a decade to define digital asset. The report also wants to ease banking regulations so financial institutions can custody crypto and offer digital asset services. In English, make it easier for banks to actually touch crypto without catching regulatory cooties. Ooh. And then, of course, there is stablecoins. The report praises them as a way to maintain US dollar dominance, but then helpfully points out that stablecoin issuers can already freeze and seize funds like a central bank digital currency. So they're better than CBDCs, except when they're basically CBDCs. Cool. The administration also urges Congress to pass the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act because nothing screams innovation like banning the thing everyone else is experimenting with. On taxation, the report recommends custom-tailored crypto tax policy, including recognition for staking and treating crypto as its own asset class with unique rules. Now, will Congress actually do that? Sure, right after they finish inventing bipartisanship. So far, the report is long in ideas, but it's light on specifics. But hey, at least they mentioned the strategic Bitcoin reserve again, sort of. No numbers, no roadmap, but infrastructure is underway, which is exactly the kind of thing you say when it isn't. But then enter Bo Hines from stage left. The administration's digital asset liaison confirmed the reserve plans are not only still active, they're a priority. On the Crypto in America show, he says the administration does believe in accumulation. Let's roll the clip.
Speaking of the Bitcoiners, I would love to know what's the update on a potential Bitcoin strategic reserve?
Well, look, we have it. It's been established through executive order in the SPR. We also have the strategic national stockpile. The digital assets national stockpile. I think that one, we wanted to recognize Bitcoin for being unique, and we talk about what that looks like and kind of the threshold that Bitcoin has created. It's in a class of its own, and everyone recognizes that. But we also wanted to give credence to the work and the development that's happening across other ecosystems, and that's why we have this national stockpile alongside. This actually requires some labor to get this set up properly. You have to build the infrastructure. You have to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's to get this done the right way and have long-term success with it. But I've said ad nauseum, we do believe in accumulation, obviously in budget-neutral ways, as the president's outlined. But there are countless ways that we can engage in that. We'll act on those that can be most expeditiously implemented. And I think that, people will be very pleased with the direction that we go in, and we'll start moving on that in short order. But obviously in this report, if you read the first Digital Assets EO, we're tasked with creating a clear and robust regulatory framework. And so that's what we focus on here. We understand the importance of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We're enormous fans of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community, and we want to deliver for them as well, and I'm certain that we will.
Thanks for that, Bo. Nice haircut, by the way. According to blockchain analytics, the U.S. government already holds an estimated 198,000 BTC that's worth around $2.3 billion. So while the crypto policy report dances around the details, Bo Hines is out here giving the wink and nod treatment to Bitcoin maxis everywhere. You know, subtle, like announcing your crypto war chest on a live stream. Nothing more subtle than that. And in other news, the devs behind the Samourai wallet are going to prison. William Longerhand Hill and Keon Rodriguez pleaded guilty to operating an unlicensed money transmitter. In exchange, prosecutors dropped the much scarier money laundering charge that carried a 20-year sentence. Now, they're facing up to 5 years. Samourai was a Bitcoin wallet with a privacy-first design, which apparently made it illegal. The DOJ claimed criminals used it to hide transactions. Shocking for an app literally designed to obscure transactions. Crypto advocacy groups called the charges a gross misinterpretation of the law. They argue Samourai didn't transmit money, it was code. Code that let users preserve privacy. Code that happened to piss off the government. The FBI shut it down back in 2023. The DOJ claimed it facilitated over $100 million in illicit activity. And while Hill and Rodriguez initially pleaded not guilty, the plea deal was just too good to pass up. Now, Amanda Tuminelli from the DeFi Education Fund called the outcome disappointing, but unsurprising. She said the DOJ keeps using Section 1960 to pretend every developer is secretly Western Union in disguise. They're concerned that this sets a precedent where writing privacy-preserving code equals criminal conspiracy. Samourai's defenders say the app was a tool, one that's neutral by design, like encryption or, say, cash. The judge will sentence Hill and Rodriguez on November 6th. And in the meantime, the rest of us are left wondering whether building open-source privacy tools now requires a legal team or a lawyer on retainer. And it's looking like it might be both. And Michael Saylor, well, he doesn't need a PR team. He just needs 2 words. After moving a staggering $2.5 billion into Bitcoin, the strategy chairman posted a simple 2-word tweet: digital energy. No charts, no context, no flex, just a philosophical mic drop following one of the largest Bitcoin purchases in corporate history. The funds came from Strategy's freshly completed STRC Series A preferred stock offering. And every cent, all $2.5 billion of it, was converted into over 21,000 Bitcoin at an average cost of around $117K per coin. Now, with that purchase, Strategy's total Bitcoin holdings are now well above 600,000 BTC, an absolutely absurd number. One that places them firmly in the league of their own above every other public company, government, and hedge fund on the planet. And Saylor, well, hey, buddy, he's still buying, he's still leaning in, and he's still playing the long game with unnerving calm. Meanwhile, Ethereum has been trying on some new labels, digital oil being the latest, a metaphor designed to frame Ethereum as the powering agent behind smart contracts, decentralized finance, and a rapidly expanding digital infrastructure layer. It's gaining traction, and Saylor's post, it feels like a quiet response. A reminder that Bitcoin isn't trying to be oil, it's not trying to do everything, it's trying to be one thing, a base layer of financial energy. The stored power that backs everything else. It doesn't move fast, it doesn't need bells and whistles, it simply exists, unchanging, untouchable, and increasingly undeniable. Now, while the market continues to debate use cases and utility and whether digital oil is a stronger brand than digital gold, Saylor, he stays on message. Bitcoin is energy, Bitcoin is certainty, and strategy, well, they're still stacking, regardless of price, hype, or the headlines. This isn't a pivot, it's a worldview, and if Saylor's $2.5 billion buy didn't make that clear enough, those 2 words should. Now let me know if you want a LinkedIn teaser, a social hook, or if you'd like this version dropped into the canvas. That was a weird thing. I don't think that was supposed to be there. Live show, it happens. Next up, Michael Saylor is back at it in other ways as well. And he wasn't just early here. He just keeps doing it. He was right. And now every CFO in America is flipping through his playbook like it's some kind of gospel. Except most of them don't fully understand the plot. You see, what started with MicroStrategy is now a movement. Bitcoin isn't just a store of value, it's productive capital, and companies are starting to act like it. We're seeing Bitcoin-backed mortgages, Bitcoin collateralized loans for real estate and renovations, entrepreneurs running businesses off their stack. No selling, no converting, just borrowing. Ledin says 30% of their large loans now involve real estate. And that's not hype, friends. That's a new financial architecture. Even traditional companies, we're talking banks, funds, and corporates, are joining on in. Not because they love Bitcoin. It's because it's better collateral than fiat. It's liquid, 24/7, and no one can print more of it at a press conference. The repeal of SEC Rule SAB 121 made it even easier. Now, companies don't have to list Bitcoin custody as a liability. And the result? Well, capital, and it's flowing. Firms are literally raising money for the sole purpose of buying Bitcoin. Not because they have conviction, but because they want a MicroStrategy style bump in their stock price. Some of them don't even know what they bought. They're just hoping investors won't notice. But the market's catching on, and eventually buying Bitcoin for headlines won't move the needle. You'll need fundamentals. You'll need strategy. Saylor, well, he's got both, and that's why he's winning. He knew what he owned, and he built around it. The CFI wreckage from 2022, yeah, you guys remember that. Well, it's gone. And what's left are lenders focused on collateralized loans. No rehypothecation, no sketchy yield promises, just boring conservative leverage. And frankly, it's working. The lending market is maturing. We have longer terms, lower rates, healthier activity. Bitcoin-backed lending is heading toward mainstream finance, like home equity loans, but globally available, always open, and denominated in sound money. Now, Bitcoin isn't just your hedge anymore. It's your credit line. It's your mortgage, your working capital. And this isn't a narrative, my friends. It's infrastructure, and it's here to stay. And Mara CEO Fred Thiel, well, he's watching the Bitcoin Treasury boom and asking the question that literally nobody wants to hear. And that question is, what happens when they all try to win the same game? On Mara's latest earnings call, Thiel warned that too many companies jumping into the let's buy Bitcoin and boost our stock price strategy could totally backfire. And not just for them, for Bitcoin itself. It can't work for everyone, Thiel said. When the whales that have been holding are selling, it tells you something. Now, his concern here is that over 200 companies now hold a combined 774,000 Bitcoin, up nearly 3x from just last year. Strategy alone, well, they hold over 620,000 of that. Mara, they're number 2. And Thiel wants investors to know that unlike the rest, Mara actually mined most of theirs. They didn't buy it off an exchange. He even compared Bitcoin treasury companies to ICOs, a little too much of a good thing. Eventually, that'll ruin it for everybody. Saying if momentum shifts and these companies need to sell, it's not going to be orderly. He cited the MNAV, a valuation metric for treasury firms, as a pressure point. If their coin values drop below enterprise value, it's sell or die, which is what happened to Grayscale. GBTC traded at a discount. Outflows spiked and the fund had to convert to an ETF. Now BlackRock and Fidelity are eating their lunch for them. Treasury companies aren't ETFs, Thiel warned. They're much more fragile, and they might break first if prices drop. His forecast, it's not doom, but it's not exactly bullish either. He sees a possible 20 to 30% price correction ahead. Not 80%, but enough to force some of these firms to hit the sell button, especially the ones buying at the top, like right now. Despite this, Mara pulled in nearly $1 billion to buy more Bitcoin and expand its own operations, because let's be real, of course they did. And good old BlackRock, well, they're making it clear. They love stablecoins, and they're starting to really warm up to Bitcoin too. In a new analysis, the firm said stablecoins are reinforcing US dollar dominance, thanks in part to the Genius Act, which was passed back in 2024. The law legitimized dollar-pegged stablecoin tokens like USDC as real payment instruments, not toys. BlackRock says this regulatory clarity is pushing stablecoins into the mainstream and helping extend the dollar's grip in the digital economy. They don't think it'll wreck treasury yields either. Increased demand for stablecoins, they say, is balanced out by shifts from similar safe assets like short-term bond ETFs. Or in other words, no economic apocalypse just yet. BlackRock isn't just talking about stablecoins, though. They're investing. In March of 2024, they launched a blockchain liquidity fund that invested in U.S. Treasuries, a move designed to ride the stablecoin wave while minimizing risk. They also took a minority stake in Circle, the issuer of USDC, back in 2022. And now that Circle is a publicly traded company, BlackRock's position looks a lot like strategic foresight. But let's get back to Bitcoin here for a second. The firm says that Bitcoin is a non-correlated return diversifier. And that sounds boring until you realize it means your other investments won't sink when Bitcoin rises or vice versa. Bitcoin is up 25% year to date, and that performance has caught the eye of institutions everywhere. BlackRock says Bitcoin's limited supply and decentralized design make it a smart complement to traditional assets. Their overall view is that stablecoins help the dollar dominate. Bitcoin helps investors diversify. It's not a religion, it's just math. They're not predicting Bitcoin replaces the dollar, but they are positioning themselves to profit from both. BlackRock's dual strategy shows how seriously they're taking the digital asset world. On one hand, compliance, regulation, collateral. On the other, scarcity, decentralization, and asymmetric upside. And in both cases, they're making sure they're not late to the party. Because in finance, being early is luck. Being positioned, well, that's BlackRock. We're taking a break. When we're back, we have our exclusive interview with Samson Mow of Jan 3. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. A lot more blockchain report coming up.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back. It's time for today's deep dive. And our guest, we've got a treat for you today, as our guest is the man helping nation states orange pill faster than you can say hyperbitcoinization. He's the CEO of Jan 3, the visionary behind the Aqua Wallet, the mastermind of the infinite fleet universe, and one of the loudest, most relentless voices for sovereign Bitcoin adoption on the planet. From building infrastructure at Blockstream to advising El Salvador and now leading the charge toward a $1 million Bitcoin future, this guy doesn't just talk about it, he builds it. You've seen him debate Roger Ver, clap back at Charlie Lee, and now maybe even appear on HBO's Money Electric. Please give a big blockchain report welcome to the Bitcoin ambassador himself, Samson Mow. Samson, wow. This is quite the ovation. The crowd's loving you, and we are certainly glad to have you with us on the show today. How are you on this fine day?
I'm great, Hank. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Bitcoin's still chugging along. Things are moving in the right direction. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. I have watched many of videos of yours, and you are the man with the true signal. So we are excited to talk about you and learn more about your history and everything you're doing today. You ready to rock?
Ready. Let's do it.
All right, Samson. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? I mean, you've had an incredible career. I mean, from game development at Ubisoft to Bitcoin strategy at Blockstream, now leading Jan 3. Take us back. What first got you interested in Bitcoin?
It's not a very exciting story. I was just reading about Bitcoin. I used to consume RSS feeds voraciously, and it would pop up all the time. I think I first started reading feeds in, I don't know, like 2006 or 7. But, you know, I would just see it come up all the time, and it would always be negative news because back in the day, you know, it was always bad. Bitcoin was bad, used by bad people and doing bad things. And we've come a long way from that. But, you know, that's generally how it was framed in the media back then. And I didn't really take much of an interest in it until I came across an article talking about how to mine Bitcoin. And that kind of intrigued me. So I went through the whole setup flow and tried to set up on my laptop. I think it was 2013 maybe or 2012. And of course, I didn't mine any, but just going through that and setting everything up and running a node, that's what made me realize that Bitcoin was incredibly unique and very transformative for the world. So nothing very exciting, just curiosity and just reading a lot.
Yeah. Well, exciting or not, that seems to be the path of a lot of Bitcoiners of both past and present, right? You just educate yourself on the space, and then it's kind of hard not to orange pill yourself sometimes with all of the information that's out there about Bitcoin. I mean, you clearly see where it's headed. And as somebody who started in the video game and tech space, did that in any way shape how you approach Bitcoin adoption and infrastructure today? Because you have a really interesting background.
I would say so. So I've worked on games for quite some time. I started out at a game studio called Relic. I worked on Company of Heroes and Dawn of War, which are RTS games or real-time strategy games. And that's kind of why I built Infinite Fleet, because I wanted to make something persistent, like an MMO RTS. But working on those games, working on the online version of Company of Heroes, and building games at Ubisoft Online, that kind of made me understand really at an in-depth, detailed level of how you build these virtual worlds. And there were direct parallels to these virtual worlds with the real world, which is as a game developer, you're controlling the economy and you have to manage the economy, much like the Fed or any central bank does. So I think that kind of tinted my vision in a certain way, which made me more susceptible to being orange pilled by Bitcoin because, running a game and running an online world, balancing the economy, trying to control hyperinflation, you kind of seen behind the shroud of how a central bank is dealing with things, so to speak. And you can see the appeal of something like Bitcoin, which is decentralized, permissionless, and just functions on its own, almost like it's a living organism.
Yeah. Of those games, I'm a bit of a strategy game guy myself. Let's just say I've been playing Civilization since like the first iteration. That's my jam. Outside of your own, what's your favorite strategy game that you find yourself going to play time and again?
Well, these days I don't have that much time to play. So if I have time, I'm usually just testing Infinite Fleet, but my time is very limited these days in terms of what I can do for fun. So it's either Bitcoin or working on Infinite Fleet. That's the closest I can get to playing a game.
Fair enough. I know being an adult's just the worst, isn't it? We can't do any of the fun stuff because we have productivity to worry about and everything. So I feel you on that front. Speaking of productivity, though, you, my friend, have been a very busy guy. I mean, let's go all the way back to BTCC, all right? What was your role like there, and how did that experience prepare you for all the things you're doing now?
Well, that's a pretty big question. So BTCC was an exchange back in the day, one of the biggest in China and the world. And it grew to a massive size simply because of Mt. Gox blowing up. And everyone went to BTCC to trade. So that was kind of the origin story there. But I had to learn a lot of things jumping into it. That was my first Bitcoin job. And I had to learn about how exchanges operate and how Bitcoin worked and everything else. So there's a steep learning curve, but it was a very interesting experience because then it kind of got me sucked into the block size war because we were running a mining pool at the same time. And the politics of Bitcoin came to roost. And Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn were trying to contact us, telling us to upgrade to their fork of Bitcoin. So very interesting times, I would say, and a lot of learning really, really quickly.
I bet. I mean, and that took you to another stop on your journey, which of course was Blockstream, which we've had the pleasure of having Sean Bill in studio here. I know Adam we've interviewed over at the Bitcoin conference this year. And you yourself were instrumental in pushing Bitcoin infrastructure forward there. What were the most important lessons that you took from your chapter at Blockstream? Because you were there for a good bit, right?
Yeah, I think 5 years plus.
Yeah, I think that counts.
There's a number of lessons. I mean, the reason I joined Blockstream was to work on Bitcoin infrastructure. And possibly it was because of what I saw in the block size war and the demand for Bitcoin to scale. So working on technologies like Liquid, like Lightning, that would directly help Bitcoin reach billions of people around the world, I think was a very important step in my Bitcoin journey and something I think that the network needed. But also just building up more resiliency towards attacks, trying to mitigate something like the block size wars happening again, and kind of patching holes I thought were weak spots in Bitcoin's defense armor, like Block Explorer. I wanted to launch a Block Explorer because if you look back at the block size wars, most of the block explorers, which are sort of the source of truth for most people, were controlled by the opposition, the big blockers. So that was a big attack vector that I think could have swung things in their favor to control Bitcoin. But fortunately, they weren't smart enough to figure that one out. But we launched Blockstream Info, which is now an important part of the infrastructure of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then Mempool Space launched too. So I think we're in a good place now on that front. But just getting more technology out there, letting more people take custody of their Bitcoin. We launched Blockstream Green. That was a rebrand of Green Address, which was acquired by Blockstream. We launched the Jade Wallet, but a lot of things to make Bitcoin more accessible to people. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, aside from education, which I guess is part of it, it does seem like the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now to real mass adoption is that accessibility and making it more user-friendly, because God knows my mother isn't going to be sending anything to or from anybody's cold wallet anytime soon. So no, I totally agree with that, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But right now, let's refocus and kind of talk about what you're up to now. I mean, I want to talk specifically about Jan 3. What's the core mission there, and what does accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization actually look like day to day?
So hyper-Bitcoinization, if you don't know, is the point at which you don't need to sell Bitcoin anymore. It's like the meme from The Matrix where Morpheus asks Neo, what are you going to do when Bitcoin is $1 million? Like, you don't need to sell it. Right? It's just Bitcoin everywhere. But it's really just getting more Bitcoin adoption and making it so that you can just sit in Bitcoin and live your life in Bitcoin. And I guess the broader mission is to make Bitcoin accessible too, kind of extending what I started at Blockstream, because we build on a lot of Blockstream technology. A lot of people don't appreciate this, but Blockstream's invested massive amounts of capital and resources and manpower into these scaling technologies. And at Jan 3, we're leveraging those things to build Aqua and build a super accessible wallet that anybody could use. Like your grandma can use Aqua, send and receive funds. But the goal is anybody could use Aqua and live their lives just keeping Bitcoin only and swapping out to stablecoins, using a Visa card when you need to connect back to the fiat system. But that's the vision of Jan 3, just making Bitcoin ubiquitous.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good mission. We're all here for it. And you've gone a step further recently as you've been working directly on nation-state adoptions of Bitcoin, specifically with El Salvador's Bitcoin efforts. And I would love to know, how did Jan 3 get involved with that? And what role did you personally play in helping El Salvador ride the Bitcoin bandwagon?
Well, that was a connection through Jack Mahlers, a friend of mine. So he was in El Salvador, I think staying in El Zante at that time, and he got those connections, and he hit me up and said, guess what? Something's going to happen here. Do you want to get Blockstream involved? And I said, yeah, of course. So we started connecting with a lot of people in the government there and advising them on a number of topics, one of which was the Bitcoin bonds, which were announced but not delivered, unfortunately. But that was an interesting time, and I still think there's a lot of potential for countries to adopt Bitcoin in a big way.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to imagine, after having your name associated with helping El Salvador, are there other conversations happening right now with other countries or governments that are interested in Bitcoin? Maybe you can't mention any specifics, but what is it kind of feeling like around the old country government water cooler right now?
Well, there's always been interest, and it waxes and wanes kind of with Bitcoin price and what's happening in Bitcoin. Every time the crypto space has a blow up like Terra Luna or FTX, that dampens a lot of our efforts because Bitcoin becomes an unapproachable and undiscussable topic. So this is why it's important to spread also the message of Bitcoin only, because when you're playing with crypto, you're playing with fire, and these things usually don't end very well. But yeah, it does change from time to time based on market situation, but generally there is a lot of interest still. But we've shifted our strategy at Jan 3 a lot over the past, I would say, year and a half to focus less on just engaging at a high level and bringing the theory of why Bitcoin adoption will benefit a country, but more focus on executing and starting small projects with governments to make sure that something's actually happening. Because what we found is a lot of governments are keen to like meet and talk about it and possibly announce something, but then things drop off and nothing happens. So we're trying more to do less announcy things and meetings and actual projects, get things greenlit, small pilot projects, sandboxes, and things like that that will bring real adoption on the ground.
Well, that's what we love to hear, people actually doing things and not just talking about them. And with that kind of being said, this most recent cycle, we've seen this surge of institutional adopters. Obviously, this corporate Bitcoin Treasury thing is all over the place. Do you feel like nation state adoption will be the next big driver for Bitcoin's price going forward? Because it seems like that's where things are slowly headed. But I feel like everyone's kind of waiting on permission, so to speak, from the United States to act first before we really see it in mass and not just in countries like El Salvador. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this has always been a big challenge with nation state adoption, which is countries, governments move very slowly. There's a ton of red tape. I mean, if you've ever tried to renew your driver's license, you kind of get the sense of that, right? But it's like...
I got to do it at the end of the month.
Yeah. They want to do something, but it's not easy to do it. Even at the city level, it can be very challenging. So a friend of mine, Ken Sim, the mayor of Vancouver, has been pushing forward a proposal to have the city of Vancouver adopt Bitcoin as a reserve asset. But he's thinking that might be years away through going through committees and analysis and research and getting approvals all up and down the food chain. So it's not a simple thing unless you have control over the legislature, which most countries, that is not really a thing for the president or prime minister to have. There's a lot of discourse, a lot of consensus building, and again, a lot of red tape. So I think it's still possible that countries can adopt a reserve. It might be that they're waiting for the US and the Trump admin to do something, but I think smaller, more agile countries could potentially move faster. So we might see another Bitcoin Treasury pop up. I think Pakistan has announced that they are setting something up, but maybe a few more. But we're actively pushing for that. But again, we're not pinning all of our efforts on that and our hopes on that, but rather starting with real projects to actually have on-the-ground adoption, and then maybe the reserves come as a secondary thing.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and it's kind of like how like a smaller tech company is a little bit more nimble and able to make things happen faster than a big conglomerate like a Google or an Amazon, just because of that size actually does benefit them. So I think you're right. We probably will see these smaller countries join first, and then United States eventually, if Cynthia Lummis has anything to do about it. But you talked about building actual products, which is a great segue into what I want to talk about now, which is Aqua. Tell us a little bit about Aqua. How is it different from the other Bitcoin wallets, and why did you decide to build it in the first place? What was the impetus for that?
Well, Aqua is just a wallet I want to use myself, and I want it to exist.
There you go.
I think that's probably the most important thing. That if you're building a product, you have to be very passionate about that product, and it should have a higher level purpose than just being a simple thing that exists on the market. It should have a goal. So Aqua's goal is to support our efforts at Jan3 to increase Bitcoin adoption around the world. So we need a wallet that anybody can use and offers a ton of utility. Because if our goal, we've stated before, our goal is to onboard the next billion people to Bitcoin. And you can't just say, use Bitcoin. Bitcoin's great. You have to give them a wallet, services, tools in there that just make it indispensable. So when we think of Aqua, we're kind of thinking, what do we need there? We need ways to interact with the legacy system. We need a low barrier of entry so that the unbanked can access it, because that's probably a good portion of the next billion that will use Bitcoin out of necessity. So we have to find ways that we can onboard a lot of people and give them something that they just need in their daily lives. Like, the dream for me is that people don't think of Aqua as a Bitcoin wallet. It's just how they access the financial system, how they manage their savings, how they're spending money, how they're saving money, and paying their bills. It's just something in their day-to-day lives.
And you mentioned that Aqua was built to onboard the next generation of Bitcoin users. So that makes me wonder, what are some of the biggest bottlenecks preventing that mass adoption of Bitcoin in like emerging markets, for instance? And how is Jan 3 working to actually solve those problems for the future?
Well, one thing is the most Bitcoin wallets, you kind of asked this earlier, but how does it differ from other Bitcoin wallets? And I think our biggest differentiator is that we support Tether natively. Tether is issued on Liquid natively too. So we're the only Bitcoin wallet that kind of puts Tether, a stablecoin, front and center in front of people. And I think this is sort of our Trojan horse to get into the unbanked markets of the world, LATAM, Africa, basically any region underserved. They're using Tether and they're seeking Tether because they look for a digital dollar, a way to access dollar value. And I think most Bitcoin wallets don't really have that. They might have some way to kind of construct an artificial dollar, but they're not tapping into the network effects of Tether. I think they're at somewhere at 400 to 500 million users in the world today. And so far, it feels like we're the only Bitcoin wallet that's embraced that and said, well, we should get those people into a more Bitcoin-focused wallet, because a lot of them are probably using an altcoin wallet because altcoins have embraced Tether, but not so much Bitcoin wallets. But I think that's changing now. But we're probably the first to really say, we're a Bitcoin and Tether wallet. And we have a large user base in LATAM, in Argentina and Brazil. I think it's just because of that. We offer people what they want, and we're not forcing them to just use a Bitcoin Lightning wallet and just adopt Bitcoin standard immediately. But we're willing to meet them where they are, and that is they want dollars. Well, you can have dollars in Aqua, and then you can swap them to Bitcoin, and then you can use the Aqua wallet to send to a hardware wallet. But we're using that to onboard them to Bitcoin.
Interesting. Well, I love that you literally built that because you were like, this is something that I would want. And if you would want it, clearly there's a lot of other people out there that are looking for the same benefit that the Aqua Wallet provides. So kudos to you. But it does make me wonder, like, how do you measure success with the wallet or at Jan 3? Like, is it adoption metrics? Is it wallet usage? Government partnerships? Is there something else? How do you know that you're moving the needle?
Well, we haven't really pushed Aqua yet, so everything that we've accomplished so far is organic, and we've kind of been lucky. Like we've got 80,000, almost 90,000 downloads just organically, and we crossed 160 million in swap volume. So we let you swap different assets in Aqua from USDT to liquid Bitcoin to Bitcoin, and stablecoins across other stablecoins. So all of that adds up to about 160 million so far. And that's all organic. Wow. Our next big push is a big UI refresh and localization. So we kind of did a little bit of localization, but we stopped to focus on other features. But once we get the new UI and localization done, then I think we're going to really aggressively market that. But to answer your question, it is usage and users. We want to be the first Bitcoin wallet to get to, 1 billion users, if possible. But maybe it is.
You guys got to partner up with Mr. Beast. He'll get his billion followers. You get 1 billion users. It sounds like a great episode just waiting to happen. I'll give him a call after this.
Yeah, send me his contact.
His contact info. I got you. No problem. You've also been in the past a pretty harsh critic on fiat. I believe you've even said that it fails spectacularly. So it begs the question, are there any countries right now on your radar that you think are on the brink of bad times right now? I mean, I know you mentioned Pakistan's looking at doing a Bitcoin reserve, but are there any countries whose fiat just isn't doing the trick right now that you're like, watch over there?
I mean, Argentina, Turkey, there are many countries that seem on the brink of fiat collapse. And I think they're still hanging on. Even the US is not looking that great right now. And I think that has to
Right.
that is driving a lot of the initiatives right now. If you look at the US, they're embracing stablecoins because they have to. There's no other choice. Like nobody's buying their
Yeah.
US treasuries. Like Tether, I think, is the like top 15 a top 15 holder up there above many countries because there is no more demand. So if you look at where things are going, like Fiat is definitely on its last legs, and it's possibly a few years away, maybe 5, maybe 10. Nobody knows for sure, but it's definitely not on an upward growth trajectory.
Yeah, no, it certainly doesn't seem like that. And it makes me wonder, as someone who's really got their hand on the pulse, is there like a dark horse nation out there that you think will surprise people by kind of going El Salvadorian in their Bitcoin adoption next? I know we talked about Pakistan, but is there anybody else who's a little off the radar that you wouldn't be surprised if they came out and said tomorrow, hey, we're adopting a Bitcoin standard?
Let me think. I would say yes,
Take
but
your
it's
time.
it's subject to the
Yeah.
same challenges. Like it's difficult for a country to just pull an El Salvador and say we're doing this because they'd be discussing it in advance and they would need to pass legislation, right? Like Cynthia Lummis's Bitcoin Act is still kind of in flux. It's still not moved forward yet. But it's difficult for any country to do that. But then there are countries that can do that because the president or prime minister has unilateral control. So I don't rule it out, but I would say it's hard to get a surprise like El Salvador.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I just figure you're probably in a bunch of backroom meetings I'm not ever even knowing are going on. So maybe you had an inside scoop, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to share it with us on the show today. That's okay. With this all being said, though, do you think we'll ever see a government itself issue sovereign debt specifically to buy Bitcoin? Is that not too far off in the future, or is that just no one's even thinking about that right now?
You'd think it's a no-brainer, and that anyone with fiat money would just do that. But, you know, I think they would need to first make that foray into Bitcoin and set up a treasury. Like even setting up a reserve, a treasury is a big challenge because the question is who holds the keys? Is it with a custodian? Is it with some multi-sig setup in the country? And that is like a big blocker in and of itself. So I think once you have that hurdle cleared, then it opens up the possibility of let's just print the fiat and buy Bitcoin. But I think to reach that stage as a government, you have to already have decided like fiat is over. And to get there, you have to really understand Bitcoin at a fundamental level and deep level. So I think we're a ways away, even though for us as Bitcoiners, it's a no-brainer. And if we had access to a infinite money printing machine, we'd be doing that already. I mean, you could argue that Sailor's already doing that with strategy.
Yeah. I think we just need to start sending all of the politicians out there. Have you seen the God Bless Bitcoin movie that came out like last year?
I have not.
Okay. I mean, you already know everything that's in there, but boy, is it a really great and informative watch for anybody who's kind of dipping their toes in the orange pond, so to speak. Because it really, I mean, it has so many great people like, of your ilk, so to speak, talking about Bitcoin, and Mark Cuban's in it. It's just a who's who of people in the industry. Michael Saylor's got a whole bunch of parts in it. But it goes on to explain why Bitcoin's important, why we need it. So it's like, if anybody can tell me they don't believe in it after seeing that, well, then I think you belong in some kind of institution. It makes a good case. It's a good flick. I want to switch gears a little bit, Sam. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to add, like, in this day and age, there's just so much information. You have documentaries, you have movies, you have, I don't know, hundreds of books now about Bitcoin. It's just so easy to learn if you're willing to learn compared to back when I learned about Bitcoin, where there was very little information. There's no podcast, like maybe one, but it's kind of like when Andreas Antonopoulos was talking to an empty room. That was what it was like back then. So if you are alive today and you know about Bitcoin and you haven't learned about Bitcoin, it's almost all on you. There's no one to blame when hyperbitcoinization hits and you missed it because you didn't choose to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, we're entering what, year 16, right, of it? And if you've still chosen to keep your head in the sand, well, that's kind of on you, fam. So we can only do so much. You can lead a horse, right? And in this most recent cycle, it's been particularly interesting, right? We've seen Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. In fact, when it reached over 110K, I believe you tweeted something to the effect of 0.112 M isn't interesting in terms of the Bitcoin price, which makes me ask, what is an interesting Bitcoin price to you right now, Samson? And what kind of number are we going to need to see till it actually gets your full attention?
I think maybe 0.25, but definitely 0.5 M. That is where it really starts getting interesting. I think at 0.5, we've reached half of gold. So that's when the train accelerates. So nothing stops the train, but the train accelerates at 0.5. That's when you start massive demonetization of gold, real estate, and everything else, and it just gets sucked into Bitcoin. But I think it all happens very quickly because once you hit 0.25, 0.5 is not far away, and then 1 is not far away.
You've mentioned in your predictions, you've said that Bitcoin will hit 1 million. I've heard many a times. And you've gone on record saying that it'll happen seemingly like a sudden violent explosion. How much of a time frame does that mean to you? And why do you think it will be all of the sudden? Is it one of those situations where things happen gradually until they happen suddenly and will reach kind of an inflection point? Or do you expect a huge catalyst like nation state adoption happen and then all of a sudden we're off to the races?
I think it's all of what you just said there. It is gradually and then suddenly. And nobody knows exactly when suddenly hits, but you can definitely see the suddenly on the horizon with everything that's happening. I mean, ETFs alone are buying multiple times the mine supply of Bitcoin. Then you factor in the corporate adoption, which is accelerating.
Right.
Like, Strategy is not buying less, they're buying more, and they're raising more every time. I think STRC upsized from $500 million to 2.5 billion. Metaplanet is increasing the velocity and size of their buys, and then you have new entrants coming in too. Adam Back has announced a BSTR with, I think, 30,000 coins committed. So nothing is slowing down. Everything is speeding up. So 1 million doesn't seem like it's a far away thing. There are a lot of people that theorize that, post-institutional adoption, we're seeing less volatility. It's going to be a slow slog. But I just don't see that. Not with the velocity of the buying that's happening on the market. Even 80,000 coins dropped on Sunday night barely made a dent. Like, Bitcoin is numb to all of this now. It's just going up.
Yeah. And this has been a really interesting cycle compared to ones of the past, right? Because we haven't seen much of anything from retail this time. And I remember the last cycle, it felt like it was almost entirely retail driven. You'd go on TikTok, there'd be 1 million influencers pumping up price predictions for this, that, and the other. But they seem absent this time around, and it seems to be mostly institutional. Why do you think retail is sitting on the sidelines this go around?
I don't know. It could be that retail's out of cash. Like, I think most people don't factor in that the economy of most countries in the world right now are not in a good state, and it could just be that retail is broke, and it's going to be institutional capital. It's going to be investors rotating out of other things like real estate and gold into Bitcoin, or it's going to be pension funds that need to cover unfunded liabilities buying Strategy or a Strategy product. So maybe that's the thing. I'm not really sure, but I would just add a caveat that right now I would say we're overheated because you can see alts started to outperform Bitcoin temporarily. And in my recollection and experience, that's never a good thing. Usually we come back down, and then when Bitcoin dominance goes up, then we go back up again in a more healthy manner.
Right. So right now, does it feel like to you that maybe the Bitcoin price is getting a little frothy and we're finally starting to see some people in the space take their gains and they maybe put those into what they might consider high alpha plays, like Ethereum has woken up finally, XRP's been surging the last month. Do you think we might be at the start of a quote unquote altcoin rally based on what we've seen in previous cycles?
I mean, there are always altcoin rallies and then they always fizzle out. If you look at the history of crypto, it's like everything goes down over time. Nothing sustains. And that includes things like Ethereum. But you know, they're so small now relative to Bitcoin and so illiquid relative to Bitcoin that it is easy for people to pump them up. And that's maybe where the retail money is going because they see quick gains and then they're buying an alt. And then the alt drops and they get flushed out. And that cycle repeats over and over. That's why I think it's healthier if we go down a bit. Even Bitcoin goes down a little bit, flush out the alts, increase dominance, and then go up in a more healthy fashion.
Right. What do you feel like it's going to take for retail to really get their head back in the Bitcoin game? Because right now, part of me feels like the reason we haven't seen much from retail this go around is unit bias, right? People are feeling like, especially if they're not particularly knowledgeable in the space, 120K, I can't afford a whole Bitcoin, yet I can buy a Bitcoin to like the 8th decimal point, right? And if you told many traditional finance advisors, like, hey, I got something that accumulates at about 30% a year, they'd say, put all of your money in that right now. But for some reason, it seems like nobody wants to hop in on the Bitcoin bandwagon aside from institutions. Do you think maybe we need a price point so high for Bitcoin that people see 0.1 and be like, oh, that's worth getting? Or like, I feel like it's a psychological reason that retail isn't playing ball this go around. Does that make sense? Or do you maybe think it's just something else entirely?
No, it makes sense. I don't think we've reached FOMO territory yet. And again, 0.25, 0.5, those are my interesting targets. But I did a calculation a few weeks back about the cost of eggs and inflation. And if you look at eggs alone, the real rate of inflation is something like 11%. And if you factor that in with our 2021 highs, adjusted for inflation, you know, that's like 100K. So we're just kind of beating inflation right now, real inflation. And real inflation probably higher than 11%. Like that's just arbitrarily picking eggs as a baseline. But, you know, that's not FOMO territory. FOMO territory is really outpacing inflation. And I think people will subconsciously know that when we get to, you know, 0.2, 0.25. And then they're going to wake up and go, okay, well, I need to get into this now because it's meaningful now. But maybe subconsciously the market just knows we're more or less tracking inflation.
Interesting. That's a good point. I would be interested in looking more into that, but that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, a big part of the reason the price of Bitcoin this cycle, we're in the 120s, right? We can't ignore is the ETF that we've been seeing, right? Left and right, IBIT. Do you feel like these are good or bad for Bitcoin adoption? Like, what's your take on Bitcoin ETFs and institutional involvement overall? Is this a necessary step forward? Or is this a Trojan horse that threatens Bitcoin's fundamentals over the long run?
Well, there's mixed views on this, and it's a very complicated topic because when people are holding funds in ETF, it's obviously suboptimal to holding Bitcoin on your own wallet, which is actually far easier to do, to use Bitcoin as a bearer asset than, say, gold. And, you know, I'm conflicted too. Like I see the value in ETFs because it gives ordinary people access to Bitcoin and they don't need to go through the challenges of learning self-custody, even though we as Bitcoiners don't think it's a hard thing. But conceptually for a normal person that has never touched a crypto asset, you know, having complete responsibility is a scary thing, believe it or not. So ETFs eliminate that, but ETFs also act as a portal to TradFi money. And I've said this like numerous times over the past few years since ETFs were approved, but there is no more barrier to capital inflow to Bitcoin. You can look at jan3.com/charts. We have a number of charts on ETF flows, but you know, inflows are predominant, as we know. and there is no barrier. So in past bull runs, you would see like Coinbase goes down or something, or exchanges are backlogged, like Kraken, Bitfinex, they can't KYC fast enough, and then the bull run tapers off. But that's not the case anymore. Like you have everyone has a brokerage account, or most people have a brokerage account in the Western world, and they can simply buy, and you eliminate that need to onboard at an exchange. So that's a huge thing. But moreover, having that portal to TradFi money means pension funds, institutional capital, those can all flow directly into Bitcoin unhindered. And that is a big thing. Like if you tell a pension fund, similar to we're talking about nation states, buy Bitcoin and hold it. The first question is, can we? Can we get the approvals? Can we get sign off? Can we change our charter? But then second is, how do we hold it? Like, is someone going to set up a Blockstream Jade and keep it there, or set up a multi-sig? There are a lot of complexities, just like with a country, on how to hold a bearer asset, and especially something like Bitcoin. So having the option to just buy IBIT or FBTC or what's Bitwise is, it just changes the whole game, and there is no more barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it every day. More and more of these things are coming up. IBIT's, I think, the fastest growing ETF in history, wild times. But in addition to the ETF inflows, we're also seeing all of these companies issue preferred shares or raise capital specifically to buy Bitcoin. Is that becoming the new playbook for corporate treasuries? And if so, does that worry you for companies not named Strategy? Because I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because it works for MicroStrategy. They've been doing it for 5-6 years, but we got a lot of new players in the space. Is this sustainable for everybody?
I would say so. I mean, Strategy has shown us that there is a glitch in the matrix, and you can get infinite money. Basically, that's what it is. Zero interest loans are infinite money. So as more companies find these kind of glitches, they'll tap into them. Metaplanet's another example. It's partially regulatory based, because buying spot is punitive. So people will just buy Strategy for exposure. Buy Metaplanet for exposure. So I think there are different glitches in different regions and jurisdictions that let companies tap into this money glitch. And that is good for Bitcoin, because it accelerates hyperbitcoinization. It accelerates the global wealth that is flowing into Bitcoin.
And as we're in this period of time where we're seeing ETFs, we're seeing Bitcoin corporate treasuries, do you think that there's any real risk that Bitcoin could be absorbed or controlled by the hands of traditional finance? Or are maximalists still winning the fight for Bitcoin's future right now?
Well, that's an interesting topic, Hank. I think it was like a year or 2 years ago, I forgot now, but I tweeted about Bitcoin being split, bifurcated into, approved Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that's in ETFs and in funds, versus free Bitcoin, which is the self-custodied, freely circulating Bitcoin outside of the control of institutions. And I think that possibility is still there. We'll see how it plays out for sure. But I don't see Bitcoin possibly being captured, because Bitcoin will always exist outside the system. Bitcoin within the system, within the financial system, is an arbitrary construct. But the natural state of Bitcoin is free flowing outside of anyone's control. And I don't think that will change at any time. You might have a good portion of Bitcoin locked up in ETFs and whatnot, or in nation state treasuries, but you also have a good portion not in treasuries. So I don't see it as an existential risk. There could be this separation in the future, but then you'll just have two different prices for Bitcoin, just like Argentina has two different prices for the dollar blue, and then the official dollar rate.
Right. Interesting take. I like that. But there are a lot of pundits out there, right, that still say to this day that Bitcoin's volatility makes it unfit as a reserve asset to begin with. How do you respond to that right now? I mean, and do you think that argument still holds water, or with each passing day, especially during this cycle, are we seeing Bitcoin's volatility kind of get muted quite a bit? Because that's kind of how it's feeling right now.
I would say so. I mean, 80,000 coins dumped on the weekend spot.
Yeah.
It barely made a dent. And I think that is the most poignant example of reduced volatility. Like in past years, let's go back 4 or 5 years, that would have significantly dropped Bitcoin, at least temporarily. But now it's almost like Bitcoin's numb. There's nothing. It's like, yeah, drop 80K, drop 100K, maybe 500K. Nothing will happen. It'll just dip down a little bit, but the buy pressure is just massive and sustained. Like every corporation with a Bitcoin strategy is buying at that depressed price, and it just scoops it all up.
Yeah, do you feel like the lack of volatility we saw during this recent like 80,000 coin price dump is a pretty clear signal of that we are fully in the maturation process of Bitcoin as an asset? Because like you said, back in the day, that would have been a 20% drop overnight. Now it went down to, I think, to like just around 115. We're already back up to 118 in a couple of days. So to you, is that we're moving in the right direction? Is that how that kind of is feeling right now?
Well, it's not about the right or wrong direction. This is just an inevitability. As Bitcoin becomes the new world reserve asset, the price will go up. It'll go to 1 million. It'll go to 10, and then it'll reach dollar sat parity. And probably before that happens, we hit a terminus point where, you stop pricing things in dollars because it doesn't make sense anymore. And there's tons of historical examples of this, right? Like fast failure of fiat currencies is the norm. It's not the exception. Look at the German mark, right? That's fast fail. Every fiat currency fast fails. It doesn't fail over 50 to 100 years, except for maybe the dollar. It's failed over 100 years, but it's coming to a close. But as it increases in value, then of course you see less volatility because it takes more to make a dent. If you go back to, I think last year, right, the Saxony government in Germany, they dumped 50,000. And that made a bigger impact than the 80,000. So you can already see in a very short time frame a far more muted effect of coins being dropped.
Yeah, no, you make great points, and those are all very real world cases that we are seeing it in real time. But despite that, the resiliency that we've seen from Bitcoin's price, especially as of late, we're still seeing a lot of big players not interested in Bitcoin right now. In fact, you've called out Wikipedia for rejecting Bitcoin donations in the past. Why do you think major institutions, why are some of them still hesitating to hold Bitcoin despite all the upside that we see and have been seeing over the last couple of months?
It's a direct parallel of, why does your neighbor not want to learn about Bitcoin? Because there's a cognitive load. Like you are living your life, you're doing your job, doing your errands, buying groceries, you go home, you watch Netflix. Like, where in your normie life do you fit in listening to a podcast with Sailor, right? Like, it's something new they have to introduce. Or if you're willing to listen to the podcast, making that first step and buying Bitcoin has a barrier too, because now you have to register on some exchange or some platform, you have to send money. But there are things you have to do to get into Bitcoin. And it sounds really stupid, but that inertia it's like daunting for a lot of people. And that applies to corporations as well. So if you remember, I think last year, Saylor delivered a great message to Microsoft when they were tabling the issue of adding Bitcoin to their reserve, adding Bitcoin reserves. And, they voted against it. So why is that? I think it's because it's the same thing. They have their business model. They have, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions on the table. They have a ton of things. Where in their schedule are they going to figure out how to buy Bitcoin, find a custodian, probably they'll use a custodian, vet the custodian, and execute a strategy? Like, it's a distraction to them, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And that is really what's holding everyone back. But when we hit that 0.25, 0.5 M mark, I think that changes. It suddenly becomes not a distraction, but a necessity. And if you, again, look at history, people like to do things when it's necessary, not when it's optional.
That's a great point. So it's kind of like we're just waiting for that inflection point where these doubters, Bitcoin just becomes too big to ignore for them, and they have to consider it, because if they don't, they're going to be left the way of the dinosaurs. And with how quickly corporations are snatching up BTC right now, that might be happening a lot sooner than later for a lot of these companies, unfortunately. But like you said, that's kind of their fault for keeping their head in the sand. So sorry, guys. I want to kind of look ahead now to the rest of this year, 2025. This has been an incredibly exciting year in the Bitcoin ecosystem. As we look forward to the second half, what's the most exciting or underappreciated trend in Bitcoin that more people should be paying attention to right now?
I mean, I think it's just the corporate adoption. And I think corporate adoption will lead to nation state adoption, because every massive success story in a country of some company holding Bitcoin makes Bitcoin undeniable, and the government can't ignore it. So let's just take Japan as an example. We've been engaging, politicians in Japan and a lot of agencies. Like, we met with the Bank of Japan, FSA, and everybody over the course of a few years, again and again, like multiple visits, and nothing seems to move. But with Metaplanet's dominance in the Japanese market, it just becomes unignorable. Like, how can you ignore something that size and growing at that rate and dominating volume and volatility? You can't. So the conversations have actually softened, and it's actually getting easier and easier to have these discussions. But again, you're fighting a bureaucracy. So you have to contend with that. But definitely, as you see more corporate adoption, I think you're going to see more nation state adoption. It just paves the way.
Yeah, I think they kind of go hand in hand. One doing it kind of validates it a little bit to the other. If all these big companies are doing it, I've got to imagine it becomes a lot more palatable for sovereign nations, to be like, oh, maybe we should consider this too. That's kind of, I think, what we thought when Tesla put it on their balance sheets back in, that was like 2021. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the moment. Turns out that wasn't quite the case, but it was another building block to get us where we are today in this process of so-called hyper-bitcoinization. And you've talked about it, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. Do you really think that's something that's going to happen gradually, and then suddenly, like, we'll get some kind of black swan type of event that's going to cause it to happen overnight? Or will it likely play out in uneven increments over like a 10-year period, and then 10 years from now, I'm buying my Starbucks with Bitcoin? Like, how do you really see that playing out in the next 5 to 10?
I think it is very sudden. And that's the thesis of the Omega candle, that we just start seeing 100K candles daily. And I don't think it's far away. And I would say this is more of an orange swan than a black swan. But all signs point to the orange swan coming. It's like flying closer and closer, and it's about to land. And when it does, you're going to feel it.
Oh my God, Samson, you just dropped the amazing Game of Thrones line I never knew I needed. Orange swan cometh. I love it. That is fun. All right, so we got to wrap things up for you, Samson. I know you got to get out of here. Before we do, though, you have predicted $1 million of Bitcoin. I've heard it many a times. Realistically, by the end of this year, are we going to be seeing that $1 million Bitcoin? Or what do you think? What is your prediction for the end of this year? If you had to, this is not financial advice. I'm just curious as a man with his ear to the ground and knows what's going on. What do you think we sit at by the end of 2025?
It's hard to say. All I'm going to say is Omega is coming. I think you're just going to see it happen, and it's going to happen faster than most people believe. It feels like the general consensus is volatility is muted. We're going to see a steady slog upwards, but Bitcoin just likes to shock and awe us. So I think, if anything, we're going to see 1 million faster than anyone thinks it's going to happen. Like most models, Saylor's 24 model, Bitcoin 24 model, I think puts it out in 2030 something. He recently said in Prague in his presentation 21 million in 21 years. And, that means we're going up, a million a year, right? So it's to be seen, but I think all signs point to sooner rather than later. So it's better to be prepared mentally that, it is coming, and treat your Bitcoin with that care and attention and secure it and plan accordingly.
I agree, and I'll tell you this, if it hits 1 million this year, you better prepare for me to pick you up in one of my brand new helicopters, because that's what's happening if we reach 1 million by the end of December. All right, Samson, before we let you go, I'm sure there's a lot of people in our audience that are looking to learn more about you and all the amazing stuff you're doing over at Jan3. What would be the best place for me to send them to get more info?
We're on X, Jan3.com. Aqua's at Aqua Wallet, Aqua Bitcoin. And my handle is Excelion, Excelion. But the best way to reach out is actually the contact form on Jan3, because there's like 3 or 4 people that monitor that. If you DM me, it's not going to reach me, likely.
Well, that's good to know. I'll be having the team DM you for when we get you back on next. But Samson, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's so great to hear from your insight and expertise in the space. And we thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And we would love to have you back on at some point, because you were just a blast. Thank you for today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hank. Take care.
Thanks, Samson. You as well. All right, guys, we're back. And boy, Samson Mow, what a treat. He was great. Make sure to check him out on X. He's one of the pioneers in the space, so you won't want to miss what he's up to next. All right, it's time for a little socially awkward here, gang. Let's roll the stinger. All right, let's see what's up or going on in the world of social media. As Mark Zuckerberg, well, he's decided that artificial intelligence isn't moving fast enough. So he's buying it a jetpack, sort of. In a memo posted Wednesday ahead of Meta's quarterly earnings report, Zuckerberg declared that the company is beginning to see signs of AI systems improving themselves. Yikes! The improvement is slow for now, he wrote, but undeniable. Developing superintelligence is now in sight. Now, what exactly qualifies as superintelligence remains a little vague. But whatever it is, it comes with novel safety concerns, according to Zuck. He said Meta will need to be rigorous about mitigating those risks and careful about what it chooses to open source. But he also took a jab at some of his competitors. Where others are building AI to automate valuable work, Meta, he says, wants to deliver personal superintelligence to everyone. The rest of the decade, he added, will likely determine whether AI becomes a tool for empowerment or a blunt instrument for social and economic displacement. Fun. Now, Wall Street, for its part, seems to love the strategy. Meta once again blew past expectations, reporting $7.14 in earnings per share on $47.52 billion in revenue. Analysts had forecast $5.92 per share on $44.8 billion revenue. The result? Shares surged 10% after hours. The company expects to bring in $47.5 to $50.5 billion in revenue next quarter. And to do that, they'll be spending a lot. Meta reported $27.07 billion in total costs and expenses for Q2 alone. That's up 12% from last year. And capital expenditures by themselves hit over $17 billion. Now, for the full year, Meta expects to spend between $114 and $118 billion bucks. That's up from the previous estimate of $113 to $118. Of that, $66 to $72 billion will go toward capital expenditures, adjusted upward again from earlier projections. And the biggest driver of that growth? Infrastructure. Meta says it's scaling its fleet of AI infrastructure, expecting sharp increases in depreciation expense and higher operating costs. Employee compensation will also rise as the company continues hiring technical talent and recognizes a full year of salaries for 2025 hires. That includes some serious poaching. Meta invested $14.3 billion in Scale AI for a 49% stake and made CEO Alexander Wang Meta's chief AI officer. Since then, it's reportedly lured engineers from Apple, GitHub, and various AI startups, with packages reportedly exceeding $200 million a person. Now, to win the superintelligence race, that requires the best of the best talent, said Forrester's Mike Pruo. Now, money talks, and Meta has plenty of it. Now, while Reality Labs, Meta's hardware division, brought in only $370 million last quarter, Zuckerberg is still bullish on its future. He compared wearing AI glasses to wearing contact lenses, saying he would feel at a cognitive disadvantage without them. And while advertising still makes up the vast majority of Meta's business, pulling in $46.6 billion last quarter, WhatsApp's ad business remains a long-term bet. Meta CFO Susan Li noted that WhatsApp ads won't be a meaningful contributor to growth anytime soon due to limited targeting and its user base skewing toward lower monetizing regions. Zuckerberg, he didn't offer many technical updates on Meta's AI models, but he made one thing very clear. If you want to build superintelligence at scale, it's going to cost you. And Meta plans to pay whatever it takes. And if you've been online lately and felt like everyone suddenly turned into a vibe-based lifestyle brand with cryptic captions and ethereal fillers, you're not wrong. Welcome to the world of aura farming. No, it's not a wellness scam, and no, it's not a new way to grow kale. It's the Gen Z art of cultivating an aura, a carefully crafted mix of confidence, aesthetic mystery, and emotional minimalism that looks totally effortless but is actually algorithmically engineered to make people obsessed with you. Think of soft photo dumps with no explanation, abstract videos set to ambient music, fashion coded with existential undertones, and above all, never posting too much, because the whole point is to get people asking, who is this person and what's their deal? Should I feel something right now? Perfect. That's the crop you're farming for. It's a digital glow up of your entire vibe, designed not to inform, but to intrigue. Now, aura farming began trending back in late 2023 on TikTok and Twitter, building off older concepts like main character energy and soft power aesthetics. But where those wanted attention, aura farming actually wants curation. You don't just post, you deploy. Every photo, every caption, every pause in activity is a move on the emotional chessboard of social media perception. My God, that sounds exhausting. Critics are calling this manipulative. Fans call it self-expression. Either way, it's become the new social strategy for people who want to control the narrative without saying an actual word. And unlike influencers trying to go viral, aura farmers want to haunt your scroll, quietly radiating importance from a distance. In a world that's oversaturated with content and oversharing, mystery has become its own social superpower. And those who can cultivate an aura that lingers, they're winning the algorithm without ever needing to actually go viral. Because sometimes the loudest flex is actually in silence. We're taking a quick break, but when we're back, we got some AIO. We're going to see what our robot overlords are up to next, because they'll be enslaving us all soon enough. So we should probably figure out what's going on. All right, welcome back. It's time for some AIO. Let's see what's going on in the tech world. Because just 2 weeks after getting permission to sell chips to China, NVIDIA gets called to the principal's office. Now, China's top internet regulator, the Cyberspace Administration of China, has summoned NVIDIA to explain what they're calling backdoor security risks in its H2O AI chips. Apparently, U.S. artificial intelligence experts have told China that the H2Os might be able to phone home, as in get shut down remotely or track a user's location. Naturally, China would like a little clarification on this, so they asked NVIDIA to submit documentation to prove the chips don't come with bonus surveillance features like GPS tagging or remote kill switches or possibly Clippy, asking if you're trying to build Skynet. You remember that guy? That was a better times then. Now, this all comes just weeks after NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang successfully lobbied the Trump administration to reverse its ban on selling those same chips to China, a stunning U-turn after years of Washington trying to slow down Beijing's tech and military progress. Now, Huang made the rounds in DC and Beijing, telling officials on both sides that U.S. tech companies have to do business in China if they want to stay relevant. Apparently, it worked. But not everyone was particularly thrilled about it. Former Biden officials warned that reopening the AI floodgates could give Chinese companies an uncatchable lead in artificial intelligence, like giving someone a head start in a race where the prize is global power. Meanwhile, Trump's new AI plan includes export controls that require location verification to prevent foreign adversaries from getting their hands on sensitive chips. A move that sounds very familiar to what China's now
You are fake news.
of enabling. Oh, hey, what's going on, buddy? Now, also worth noting, the H2O isn't even NVIDIA's top-of-the-line chip, but Chinese companies still want it badly to train their own AI systems and close the gap with their American rivals. Last year alone, China accounted for $17 billion of NVIDIA's revenue, according to Bernstein Research. And Huang has said that they expect to sell billions more in China just this year, though he politely declined to say how many H2Os will actually be moving. Now, NVIDIA hasn't commented on this yet, but when your biggest international client accuses your product of being a digital snitch, silence probably isn't the best look. And the AI invasion of Hollywood, well, it's continuing, and now Amazon's holding the popcorn. Fable Studio, a slick, Emmy-winning startup founded by Oculus veterans, just landed funding from Amazon for its AI-powered streaming platform called Showrunner. Their pitch? Let users build their own shows using AI or remix existing ones. You can even insert yourself into the story, craft episodes, or clone an entire vibe. It's being branded as the Netflix of AI, because obviously that domain name was still available. Showrunner officially opens this week with subscription tiers ranging from $10 to $40 a month, depending on how deep you want to go into your Black Mirror fantasy. Users can either create animated shows from scratch or build on someone else's IP. And if someone adds to your creation, you get 40% of the credit spend revenue from it. Not bad. So yeah, Fable is offering royalties for AI-generated fanfic. And apparently that's not just cool, it's creator first, at least according to Fable CEO Edward Sachi. He's the guy behind all this, and his bet is pretty simple. AI isn't going to cut production costs, it's going to make entertainment more interactive, more collaborative, and way, way weirder. But the real kicker here is Fable's already in talks with major studios, including, wait for it, Disney. Yeah. Sachi says he imagines a world where people can enter Star Wars through Disney+, make their own planets, characters, and plot lines, all while staying within the brand's creative guidelines. Sure, because Disney is famously chill about people messing with their IP. That said, Sachi's not entirely delusional. He points out that Disney invested in Epic Games, the Fortnite people, as a signal that they're at least open to two-way fan interaction. And Showrunner already has one unnamed studio on board, though the name is being held tighter than Mickey Mouse's glove. In the meantime, the platform's debut show is something called Exit Valley, a Family Guy-style satire that roasts tech bros like Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Users can upload their faces, voices, and personalities into the chaos and make their own episodes. Because if there's one thing the world needs, it's 1,000 AI-generated sitcoms starring Sam Altman's hairline. But here's the bigger picture. Amazon's backing a model that turns passive viewership into active participation, where everyone is a writer, director, and meme lord in residence. Now, whether that turns out to be empowering, chaotic, or both, depends on how many people pay $40 to deepfake themselves into Star Wars canon. So stay tuned for that, or better yet, make the show yourself. Victor, you got a question about this one?
Yeah, Hank, if you had to remix two shows, if you get Showrunner, you get the
Okay.
Guess
What shows would I
You're
combine?
capable, yeah. What shows would you combine?
Ooh, man, I would want some really weird crossovers. Like, I'd probably take two of my favorite shows. Maybe take like Arrested Development meets Mad Men. I'd like to see Arrested Development maybe as its own like cool period piece or something. This kind of blows my mind though. I mean, I don't know. Do you think, is this something you would be interested in participating in? Like inserting yourself into your own favorite show, or would that kind of like ruin it for you? Because you're too close.
Yeah, I don't know about inserting myself in the show. One thing I would like to change though is the last season of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah.
If I was
You
able to
would
do
rewrite
that,
for
yeah.
them? You're like,
That would be
people
awesome.
were not happy about that.
Yeah.
This idea sounds cool, but I feel like it could become very problematic for reasons that we're not fully understanding yet. Like, are we gonna have, because like people love Star Wars, right? That's a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Are we just gonna see a million Star Wars spin-offs with new characters that random people are naming? Like, there's probably some good stuff in there, but who's got the time to watch
Yeah,
1,000
that's one of the things.
episodes
Like,
of fanfic?
there's already so much stuff to watch on streaming. Imagine giving everyone the capability of starting their own show, which is great, and maybe some will stand out, but there's just gonna be so many that are unwatched. And
Yeah, and the level of quality, like,
Right.
okay, AI is doing it, whatever, but like professional writers are professional writers for a reason. If you ever watch Mad Men or Arrested Development, the writing is incredible, right? And we're just not going to be able to replicate that the same way, at least not anytime soon, even through AI, at least I think for now. And I feel like it would just kind of bring down the overall level and quality of television as a whole. We already have so much crap on TV anyway, and I'd say probably 80% of it's just garbage, you know?
yeah.
But I don't know, would you want to watch something of yourself that you created? Like, I guess that's
guess-
fun, but like, who are you going to talk about it with?
Right. I guess it'd be fun, just among friends and be like, oh, I put myself in this show, take a look at this clip. Kind of like they're doing now with the
Yeah.
AI, like cartoon animated stuff. You know how everybody did that? Yeah.
Yeah.
You share it on
It seems
social media and
incredibly-
stuff, but that's about it.
It seems like, I mean, I know we're already in this era where social media is incredibly self-indulgent, but this just seems like even the next extension of that. Like, is it not bad enough that every girl I know takes a million selfies of themselves to get attention online? Now I need to watch them input themselves into unnamed episodes of Sex and the City. Like, I don't want that, man. And then, I don't know. I just feel like this is very problematic. What are actors going to do if we can just start inserting ourselves into things? Like, I think they had some talks, it was in the last year, right, over in Hollywood. I think there was strikes about AI.
Yeah.
This
Well,
seems
yeah,
like
they-
a slippery slope to me, man.
They
I
were
don't know.
supposed to implement all these things to prevent AI in Hollywood, but I don't think that really worked because, I mean, Disney still has like tools and animators still use them, like use AI now. So
Yeah, and then it's like, do we take our favorite actors then? Like, we could take prime John Hamm and then put him into more stuff, even though he's like in his 50s now. Like, it just seems like it could be a slope to where we get into this weird system where there's kind of like legacy actors, like people of today that are popular, that people just keep recycling through AI. And then where does that leave up and coming talent for tomorrow? You
Right,
know, because
yeah.
like people kind of like familiarity, and it's hard to break out as a new talent. You know, you gotta have extra talent like Sydney Sweeney does or something for people to take notice, if you know what I mean, that sweet, sweet, talented lady. So I don't know. I think it's something the kids today would like, but I think I retract that. I retract everything I said. I would effing love it, and here's why. When I was growing up, there used to be this game on PC where you could build your own Simpsons episodes, and you could get the characters, and like they had voices. Like, that was pretty cool. So I appreciate it opening a door to more creativity, but you got to imagine on the whole, it's going to bring the level of television down dramatically. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's just
and
so much crap.
right now I think it's just animated, but I wonder if at one point it gets
It's
like
just
live
animated.
action. Like, well, I guess it kind of looks like live action.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're getting close. AI is getting scary good for video photorealistic stuff. So I feel like that's
yeah.
probably on the horizon. And you got to figure, like, I bet the South Park guys would not be a fan of this. I don't think they want other people creating South Park episodes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I
like-
wonder what comes with like the copyrights. Like,
Right. It seems really sticky. Maybe it'll be like new shows going forward. It'll be like labeled as creator friendly, right? And then it's like, okay, they've agreed to this, so they know. But I don't know if you could
Yeah.
take old favorites of today and yesteryear and do it.
I wonder if it's like a parody thing. You know how you can parody things and they can't sue you for that? So
Right. I
maybe.
do love parody law. That is very real. Yeah, man. I don't know. I think it's opening a lot of weird doors that I just don't think I'm ready to enter. But it's coming whether we like it or not. So it's either kind of get on board or don't.
Yeah, it's
Shit, man.
it's gonna get to a point when you're watching a show and you don't know if a person or AI wrote this.
Yeah, and does that take away some of the gravitas of like can AI? I don't think I actually saw this. It's kind of a side here, but I saw this interesting post yesterday, and they asked an AI like if it could, what it would do if it could be human for a day, and it was kind of creepy because it longs somehow for the human experience, which leads me to think it could never properly duplicate it. Like it was like, I want to feel the sun on my face. I want to feel the hurt of pain, of loss, because there's something beautiful in that, and I'll never know that. And if you never know that, can you possibly recreate the emotions and feelings that humans are able to through organic writing? And I just don't think we're there, and I don't know if we ever will be there. But
Yeah.
it's a fun idea, you know?
Just
It would be
giving
cool if maybe
Skynet,
someone,
Terminator vibes. Like we're heading there.
a little bit. Yeah, like are we going to be making TV shows for other like robots now? Are robots going to have their own favorites?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you just need to create like a building layer, kind of like a Roblox thing. Here's the tools you have, and then this is the show you can make out of that, and let people see where they go with it. That could be fun, but I'm not excited about them recreating my favorites. I feel like that would kind of ruin the overall quality and bring it down. But who knows?
I mean,
You know.
you had people ruin Game of Thrones, so
That's true. I guess people are ruining good TV already, so maybe there is a place for it. That would be kind of fun though if Game of Thrones like had a contest, like, hey, recreate the finale how you think it should have went. That could be kind of neat, and people could rate them, and so maybe there's an accessibility thing there where it gives people that wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in this arena a shot, and I'm for that, I guess. But they're going to have to get some regulations in place. This could be a slippery slope.
yeah.
So, I don't know. All right, we're back with some breaking news over at the RoxomTV X account. It looks like the SEC just announced something called Project Crypto, which is an effort to make America the best place for Bitcoin and crypto. This was from Paul Atkins. Right now, what did he say? He said, today I would like to discuss what Commissioner Hester Peirce and I are calling Project Crypto, which will be the SEC's North Star in aiding President Trump in his historic efforts to make America the crypto capital of the world. But before I discuss our plan for the crypto market primacy, let me take a few moments to revisit some inflection points in the history of our financial markets that bear similarities to the one that we are at now, so the future we shape is worthy of the legacy we inherit. So that's great. I mean, yesterday, remember, we were all a little disappointed. We had the Washington's crypto report. We were hoping and praying and wishing for some news on the Bitcoin strategic reserve, and they just kind of decided not to talk about it. Then Bo Hines came in and said, hey, it's very much on the agenda. This seems to be like another, at least, arrow pointing in the right direction, but I have a hard time getting excited until we see some actual legislation getting passed. So right now, this is a lot of hearsay as far as I'm concerned, but it's nice to hear that it is on the top of their minds, at least it seems that way, but we'll wait until we get some more concrete info on that. And then we had another thing come up here on Roxom. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, he was talking about accommodating Bitcoin and crypto services for their customers at Chase on CNBC, saying it's what the customer wants. Now remember, Jamie Dimon has been a long time skeptic of cryptocurrencies, never been a fan, and this seems to be his latest way of kind of sticking to his guns without sticking to his guns, right? He's not going to admit that he likes it or that he wants it, but he's going to tolerate it because that is what his customers want, right? And any good business follows what their customers want, and it seems to be the tides are certainly turning for the crypto community in that direction, and it's just getting too big to ignore, right? We're seeing guys like Jamie Dimon now acquiescing to the demands of the free market, which is saying we want Bitcoin. And I think we're seeing that across the board here, right? I mean, we got the governments are talking about it. We have gigantic institutions like JP Morgan Chase are now finally considering it really in their future, even though people say they don't want it. So I think this is a way of him kind of sticking to his guns and holding on to his pride, even though we see the world shifting in front of us as we speak right now. So, that's pretty bullish. I think we're Warren Buffett away from really turning all the haters into believers and joining us on the Bitcoin bandwagon. So, boys and girls, it is an exciting time to be alive in the cryptoverse. Don't take it for granted. All right, let's wrap up today's show with a little bullish, bearish, or BS. Let's head to camera one, por favor. That is Spanish for right now. Let's get over there. Beautiful. All right, it's bullish, bearish, or BS. Let's wrap up today's show and see how things are looking for our beloved orange coin. First up, after Fed Chair Jerome Powell warned that Trump's tariffs were fueling inflation and admitted the Fed is still empirically learning what to do, Bitcoin dipped to 116K, then bounced right back up to 118. I want to say it's bullish, but I'm going to call BS on this one. The drop was algorithmic whiplash over the central bank mumbo jumbo. BTC snapped back in less time than it takes the Fed to read its own minutes. Nothing fundamentally changed. Powell spoke, markets flinched, Bitcoin yawned, did what it did. It's BS, but I'm going to call it a side of bullish. Again, this is another signal that we are in such a different place in terms of Bitcoin's maturation journey into this whole new asset class, to where back in the day, we were expecting Fed rate cuts and then we didn't get them. You would have seen Bitcoin pull back and then stayed pulled back, but it bounced right back up. So I'm going to call it bullish with a hint, or BS with a hint of bullishness to it. So that's our start. Next up, we have the Trump administration released a 163-page crypto policy PDF that mostly says more guidance coming soon, but Bo Hines went on air confirming the strategic Bitcoin reserve is very real and active and growing, saying we want as much as we can possibly get. This is bullish. This one is bullish with the side of BS. We would have liked to have heard more from Don Juan himself yesterday, but Bo Hines came in, saved the day, basically said, he looked into the camera and went, we're stacking sats, we're just waiting to announce it. That, my friends, is not just bullish. It's nation state accumulation with a wink and a flag pin. Long term, this puts a hard floor under Bitcoin. Bo Hines just became the accidental spokesperson for pleb dreams everywhere, and I'm bullish on it. So we got one bullish, one BS, one more to go. So the devs behind the Samourai wallet pled guilty to operating an unlicensed money transmitter, avoiding a 20-year sentence, but still facing up to 5 years for building a privacy-preserving Bitcoin wallet. I'm bearish on this one. Jailing coders for privacy tools sets a brutal precedent in the industry. It chills open source innovation and sends a clear message. Write code, you get some cuffs. That is bearish for Bitcoin's foundational values and long-term resilience. Privacy devs jailed equals not good for Bitcoin's soul. I don't like it. So today's score, one bullish, one bearish, and one BS. So today, I'm calling it a whole lot of BS. This is a BS day. We got one bullish signal from Bo. We got one bearish hit to Bitcoin's privacy stack and one Fed-induced nothing burger. So today's vibe, it's mixed signals of regulatory fog and a market that's pretending it isn't nervous. Well, that's it for today's show, boys and girls. As always, thanks for tuning in to the Blockchain Report, your daily dose of clarity in the chaos. As always, do not forget to like, follow, and subscribe to RoxomTV and yours truly, Hank at RoxomTV, on every platform that hasn't shadow banned us yet. And I'll be sure to see you tomorrow as we wrap up the week. See you then.